Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Turning Towards Life with Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace. That's the easy bit to say every week because it's always the same. But it's also always the same that I'll speak on my behalf, absolutely thrilled to be doing this as usual. Feeling the great joy that comes from having a regular practice, and Lizzie getting a chance to talk to you. Feeling very excited about this source that we're going to be talking about. And we've been trundling along with this project for 91 weeks now, which always feels like a great source of amazement for me. So welcome to all of you. Welcome to you, Lizzie, to the increasing numbers of you who follow us on our podcast. So you have this coming into your ears. Welcome. We're really glad to have you with us. And for those of you who are with us now, this morning, Sunday morning on Facebook and later on YouTube, welcome too.
Hello, everybody. It's, as Justin says, truly miraculous to be here. You say that we've been trundling along, Justin. It feels like a miraculous trundle in a way. That we're here again and we keep doing it. Feels very life-giving somehow. Like, sometimes in my life I've had this narrative of doing something over and over again would be like being trapped or something, and it's often how I relate to practices. It's like, oh gosh, but I can't do that for a lifetime because then I'll be hemmed in or something. And then the opposite happens with all the things I've ever sustained, which means that clearly I've got some story going on that's not true. So for me, this is a beautiful piece of evidence that my story about doing something again and again brings entrapment, and it brings a different something altogether, which is a kind of empowerment. I feel empowered and kind of liberated by the fact that we're doing this. So I'm very grateful to be here. And this source that I've chosen actually comes from, I receive a weekly, I think it's weekly, yeah, or is it daily? I think it's a daily email, actually. Don't even know, my brain's slightly addled. But I think it's a daily email from Richard Raw and his team, which includes Cynthia Bourgeois and lots of other contributors. And Richard Raw I came to through something called the Enneagram. And he has this wonderful daily email that's not always about the Enneagram by any means. It's actually rarely about the Enneagram, but it's more about spirituality and the kind of mystical Christianity that he practices and has done for many, many years as a person of that faith. And it just has all these different things in it. And this week there is a whole series on conscious parenting. And I have long held this feeling about parenting that it's a very precarious, beautiful, and important place to come from as a narrative when we're with anybody, whether they're our children or not our children, but to have a secret narrative, which is like not so secret now, but that each of us is parenting each other, and that each of us holds a very, very important, powerful role in one another's lives when we are friends or colleagues or leaders or anything in the world. And that if we can be healthy in our relationships to one another through the guise of wondering what it's like to be reparented in some ways, like many of us. Well, I don't think it's possible to have had a perfect childhood, actually. Now maybe I'll change my mind one day, but I think most of us have experienced some kind of wounding or some kind of thing that has been difficult for us. And in this reflection on parenting, I realized that there's a way that we can find healing through one another, and with healthy parenting as a lens through which to see, we can be this for one another. And I've certainly experienced this through my wonderful community of people that I have in my life, that I'm being reparented and my reference points have changed because of other people's points of view and the way other people hold me and deal with me as a person. And so when this popped up, I thought, my goodness, of course this is about parenting, but it's about parenting, yes, in the smaller, larger, because it's a way bigger job to have an actual biological being in your presence, or if you've adopted somebody, or, you know, there's such a big topic around it, you know, actual, what we culturally understand as the word parenting, but that I really don't think it doesn't that spread a lot further than that. And so when this came up, I thought, what a brilliant source to reveal to us some of the orientation that we might have as parents. And I really resonated with the way that Brené Brown speaks of her parenting, and found it very difficult to separate it from the way that I would want to be able to write a manifesto for my own life about just being a person. So that's why I've chosen this source. Justin, do you want to say something before we begin, or shall I?
There's lots I want to say, but I won't say any of it now.
Okay.
It's a wonderful introduction to what we're going to read.
Okay, so let me
before
begin.
You read this, can I just, I'll just say for anyone who's recently joined us, if you're not with us live and you want to find the sources so that you can read them, share them, follow along, you can always come and find us at our website, turningtowards.life. When we publish the recordings of the conversations, we always publish the source or a link to the source there. So you'll find that there somewhere too.
Okay. So here we go. This is by Brené Brown, and it's her parenting manifesto. Above all else, I want you to know that you are loved and lovable. You will learn this from my words and actions. The lessons on love are in how I treat you and how I treat myself. I want you to engage with the world from a place of worthiness. You will learn that you are worthy of love, belonging, and joy. Every time you see me practice self-compassion and embrace my own imperfections. We will practice courage in our family by showing up, letting ourselves be seen, and honoring vulnerability. We will share our stories of struggle and strength. There will always be room in our home for both. We will teach you compassion by practicing compassion with ourselves first, then with each other. We will set and respect boundaries. We will honor hard work, hope, and perseverance. Rest and play will be family values as well as family practices. You will learn accountability and respect by watching me make mistakes and make amends, and by watching how I ask for what I need and talk about how I feel. I want you to know joy, so together we will practice gratitude. I want you to feel joy, so together we will learn how to be vulnerable. When uncertainty and scarcity visit, you will be able to draw from the spirit that is part of our everyday life. Together we will cry and face fear and grief. I will want to take away your pain, but instead I will sit with you and teach you how to feel it. We will laugh and sing and dance and create. We will always have permission to be ourselves with each other. No matter what, you will always belong here. As you begin your wholehearted journey, the greatest gift I can give you is to live and love with my whole heart and to dare greatly. I will not teach or love or show you anything perfectly, but I will let you see me, and I will always hold sacred the gift of seeing you, truly deeply seeing you.
I'm just moving this text to one side of my screen so I can see you and I can see the text, Lizzie. Gosh, there's so much here, isn't there, about how we might be with one another. But as I was saying to you just before we started, as well as the 3 young people who live and grow up in my family who are not so young now, are in their teens, we've also had the joy of looking after my nieces and nephew over this weekend, who are proper small people. It's so joyful being with them. And I'm reminded about how uncertain and shifting and chaotic it is being around young children. You know, in the sense of never really knowing what's going to happen, and mostly, truthfully, never being in control of anything. Well, because when you have a bundle of unrestrained life, like a 2-year-old in the house. It seems to me that our instincts to want to control, that part of us that gets frightened and thinks two things simultaneously, or a bunch of things simultaneously. One is I should be in control. The second one is I should know how to be in control. And then the third one is the deeply self-critical, self-shaming part, which is if I can't be in control and don't know how to be in control, then something is terribly, terribly wrong with me, with you. And for many of us, that's where all the trouble starts. It's finding ourselves in exactly this place. And it's one of the things that I appreciated about Brené Brown's writing, was this move that she makes to, yes, to stand for many values that she feels are important, that I find myself agreeing with, but also to honor how human it is to be constantly uncertain about how to do anything, particularly when you're new into the being. This is true of babies, and it's true of adults. When the other person is a mystery to us, and whatever we summon up doesn't make the world go exactly the way that we want it, because it can't happen. The gifts that come from being kind to ourselves about our own incompleteness and the other person's incompleteness, but then also owning up to our incompleteness publicly, to young children as well as to adults, to say, when I did that, I got it wrong. I'm sorry. Here's what I really care about, and here's how I'm going to repair that move. And I think that for lots of us, I've certainly known this in myself as a parent at times, and as a friend, and as a member of a community. And it's so hard to deal with the shame of not having known what to do and having got it wrong, that right at the moment, that the reparative thing to do, that would particularly when there's somebody very young and tender growing into their personhood, it's so easy at that point to cement down on our rightness. So I must be right, and that must mean that you're wrong, and we keep the whole thing going, and then in the process inevitably transmit the shame that we're feeling gets passed on. And so Brené's writing is a very large invitation to catch ourselves, to learn to catch ourselves at that moment, and to practice turning. And I suppose in my own experience, it's been one of the hardest things for me to learn, because in one way or another, I, like most of us, took up that I'm meant to know, and I'm meant to be right, and I'm meant to not be ashamed, all of which are the trap. But when we learn to do that, and the moments we can do that, we give one another the giantest gift, which is reminding one another that right in the midst of the inevitable chaos, even when, what does she say, scarcity and uncertainty aren't visiting, even when everything else is apparently together, we give one another the gift of being human and being able to rest in our own humanity and capacity right then. So, and I think it's one of the things that most of us don't get taught. We don't often have models who will teach us this, just because of the ordinary thing of no one is teaching it, you know. So it keeps itself going.
I'm so appreciating, Justin, this place where, as people in positions of responsibility, we are disclosive about our own process. I think there are these very strong narratives or roles that we take up that mean there are certain things we have to be in that role. So as a leader, or as a boss, or as a parent, I have to always know what I'm doing. I have to be strong. I have to be in control, as you say. I have to have this down. Otherwise, why would I be in this position? Like, who said? And the people who did say I could be in this position, it's like, well, you're deemed good enough to be in that position, so you better live up to it, kind of thing. So there's a lot invested in the role of things. And so I can feel this relief at being given permission to be able to be one's vulnerable, real self in all these situations where we think that being powerful and being in control and whatever feels like this kind of rigid list of have tos. And instead of that rigid list of I have to be this, this, and this, I could just be real. I could just be myself. I could just be whatever is happening and disclose what my experience is. And as you say, it gives a chance to repair and also demonstrate and model what it means to apologize, or what it means to be accountable, or what it means to own my part in something. Because definitely if you and I are here, I'm doing something and you're doing something. But it's one of the things that we broadly don't get taught. Like even in our education system, we don't have teachers that say, you know, I'm really sorry, I completely messed that lesson up and we need to start again because we need to learn about Henry VIII or something because I said all the facts wrong. You know, like when did that ever happen? Certainly in anything I ever got taught, that never happened. And it just feels like saying I'm sorry and being willing to admit that I didn't get that completely right has become something that's so huge that we have to teach about it. You know, it's like, in a way, it's what's required. It's what makes the world happen, is that we each are real with each other. And so I can feel this relief of, oh, all that's needed is myself. Like I haven't got to be some perfect person who can get this right, but that I can be in relationship with people, and that's a more powerful place than control. So in my mind, it's kind of forming into, is this a genuine relationship, or is this me trying to control the situation so I can have the outcomes be what they should be? And certainly in my life as well, Justin, with young ones, it takes so much work still today now on my nervous system calming down and consciously having to practice that nervous system calming down. We were in the garden yesterday and the children were in the paddling pool. And I was nearly like leaping off my seat every 2 minutes. And they're so not vulnerable. We're like 2 meters away from them in a paddling pool kind of thing. And of course, it's unpredictable. And everyone's squirting everybody with whatever. And it's really hot here in London at the moment. And that's the kind of only place to be, is in the paddling pool. And it's fun and it's wonderful. And still, my nervous system is going through this imaginary series of events that might happen if I take my eye off the ball for a second. And of course, that's really important, but I can feel the distortion in it. You know, I can feel my lack of being able to control this turning into a jangly nervous system, and this feels too precarious, like all the time. And of course, I have that less with adults, but I also, you know, I spend my life also holding a bigger system of people, and I don't know what anyone's going to do at any one moment. You know, who anyone's going to be, what's going to happen in their life. And so letting go of having a grip on it and making it predictable for me is a very much wasted piece of energy, because I really know I can't have things be the way that I think they should be in an ideal world. And yet there's this big part of me that just wants everything, like, let's batten down the hatches, let's just stay predictable somehow.
Mm. There are lines from two different poems that are coming to mind for me. I suppose they're two poems that I've been reading recently that it seems are at the heart of this. So one is a line from a very beautiful David Whyte poem that we have read before, called What to Remember When Waking. And it says, right in the middle, you're not an accident. None of us is an accident. We're here, our being here, whatever way we came into the world. So sometimes we get told we're accidents. So you see why I'm saying this, I hope, in a moment. Whatever way we came to be here, we're here to be up to something. And that, it feels important to me right now, because it's right in the heart of this piece by Brené Brown, is there are many things that we can take a stand for that we care about. We can take a stand for being graceful in the midst of scarcity. We can take a stand for practicing gratitude. We can take a stand, as she does, for hard work. I can't remember what she says now. There's this hope and perseverance. Like, we can, to be a human is not to be absent in the world, right? And at the same time, there's this other line from another poem, which is by Thomas Tranströmer. The name of the poem I've completely escapes me for the moment. And he says, you'll never be complete. Don't be ashamed to be human, to be complete. And it seems to me that it's right in the intersection between those two that we get ourselves into trouble, because we can feel how much it matters that we stand for things that are important and true and life-giving in the world. But we mistake that sometimes with to take a stand for it means that I have to be in charge, I have to be in control, I have to be able to guarantee that life will go this way, that way, and all of which is a giant turning away from ourselves. So it's I won't experience this, and often when we're parenting or with other adults even, I won't let you experience this. This something will not be allowed here, like chaos or pain or shame. Oh, shame is the one that we're talking about. So it so helps to, I was feeling this as you were talking about your work, about the way in which the world in which you take a part in bigger systems. It so helps for us to take a stand and also to know ourselves as forever incomplete and bring our incompleteness in, because it's an undeniable truth of our lives, is we are always incomplete. We are never in control. We don't even control what we feel, let alone, the thing that's right here. We can't even control that, let alone what happens between me and you, let alone.
Yeah.
So it's the act of or all of the acts of pretense that end up being, they may well be for the sake of something that feels like it's kind, like if I pretend I've got it all together, I'll have it all together, or if I pretend I'm in control, I'll be in control. And they end up being unwitting, deep unkindnesses to ourselves, and particularly, to other adults, but particularly, I think, often to children who are right in the midst of this learning, what can I be, and do I have to keep on carving parts of myself off? That when we manage to do this very courageous and very difficult thing of, I will own up to my own incompleteness as well as taking care.
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep an eye on you in the paddling pool, for sure. But I'll also own up to, I'm not in control here. It's when we can do that we end up having the chance of being a blessing to one another. And when I use that term very deliberately, because I think to be a blessing to one another is to be a welcome to one another's humanity and incompleteness. And like we've said many, many times, I think it's a deep, I'm going to say it in a very mild way, it's deeply unfortunate. I actually think it's a tragedy of our current circumstances that we are called upon to do something about, that we don't often have models of this. We don't have models in our public life. I'm really struck by what you said about teachers. What a gift it would be. The one I was thinking about is, I never had this. What about if we're teaching a group of people, young people, say, in a school, and we get to say, I was really beastly to you yesterday. I'm so sorry. The whole way I handled what happened in the class, I can see was way off, and I want to learn together with you how we might and how I might do this so that we can all learn together. That move, when we're not able to find it in ourselves and so teach it to others by being it, we perpetuate the cycle of self-abandonment that's going on. That Brené's Manifesto is such a stand in a different place from it.
Absolutely. It just feels like a whole different world, doesn't it? Like a mind for a word from A Course in Miracles, a sentence from A Course in Miracles is coming up that somebody shared with us the other day when we were doing our final session of the year-long professional coaching course, Justin, which is that somebody said that they were holding this sentence from A Course in Miracles, which is, "In my defenselessness, my safety lies." And so I held that for the whole time. And I thought, okay, so my defendedness is going to be where my safety is not. So how can I identify all my defense here? And how can I realize that that's not where safety is? Which in a way is this. It's like, what's my work in identifying all the ways that I'm defended and rigid and want to hit back, or not feel that shame that you're talking about? And how can I practice being defenselessness and thereby bringing about the safety that I thought I could bring about by being defended?
Yeah.
But to live the paradox of the more undefended I become, the safer I become, which is just the opposite of what my personality wants to do. And it feels like that's what this conversation is. And there's so much in it, you know, to hold a role of responsibility, to feel like you've been given something precious to take care of. It's all set up against us in a way. You know what I mean? Like, to really care as well means to be really controlling. And so to find our way through the kind of quagmire of control and care, and realize that we can care and be undefended, and we don't have to have our care translate into holding everything so tightly that it can't breathe, but to care in a way that allows and accepts and translate life into this kind of realm of seeing what's here, not what I need to do to keep things the way I need them, to feel like I've got everything in control, which of course is also a suffering. You know, I know myself, when I'm feeling like I want things a certain way, it doesn't turn out very joyfully for me. It doesn't happen that I feel like I've had a great day if I've been needing things the way I need them to be, rather than welcoming them as they are. And yet, when I'm frightened and when I'm worried and when I'm concerned, I can feel the lockdown happening, and I can feel the feeling like I've got to get things straight around here. And so, you know, your situation with, I think you said a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old in your house, I can imagine that's very much like a practice of, okay, so how do I let things be and make sure nobody hurts themselves?
Right.
but to not intervene when there's not anything that is harmful to anybody in the system or whatever, but to let things unfold. And this is like, feels like, I think, you know, another reason I chose it is it just feels like the work of our lives, to be vulnerable and to be self-disclosive and to take our part in things truly, and also afford ourselves to enjoy our lives, frankly. Because without this letting go and loosening our grip, how can we serve in the way that we intend? It all gets twisted in this way of controlling.
It's one of the things I love about what I understand about Zen Buddhism, is this orientation that I found in there to just enjoying the very simple things like breathing. You know, the central Zen practice is basically sitting very, very, very still for a long period of time and breathing. And it's not intended to be, can be very hard, but it's not intended to be punishing. It's actually intended in many ways to be joyful. Like, it's just enough that I'm here and I'm breathing. What, my goodness, what a miracle. And so I love what you said about both letting things unfold and holding sufficient boundaries. So to because it could sound like not being in control means letting go of everything, which of course it doesn't, because that also means letting go of our care. Of course I care. My nieces and nephew here, I care that they thrive and flourish and don't hurt themselves and get fed and they're clean, and you know, But the other thing that was just occurring to me as we head towards the end of our time is it seems to me that we've been, in one way or another, in a recurring conversation about practice. And one of the implications of the conversation we've been having about practice has been the mistake that happens when we think of ourselves as a fixed thing. So if I think of myself as a parent, and I've thought of this many, many times, it's taken a lot of undoing to let go of this. So once I think that, a tiny unknown living thing arrives in my arms, and now I'm meant to know what to do perfectly and take control and everything. At that moment, I'm relating to myself as a fixed something. So I am a fixed something, and I'm meant to know what to do in the situation. And when I don't, I fall short, and then I feel shame and want to push it away. But when I can relate to myself and to others as unfolding, never finished some things, then when the world doesn't go the way I want it, and I'm not the way I imagine, what I then get to know to do is to practice, and that how I practice what I say, how I come back into contact with myself and others, is changing me and others all the time. We're never fixed. So the holding on to ourselves is where we get into this rigid, I'm right, you're wrong, because it didn't go the way, and I'm ashamed, I'm deficient, and you're deficient, is all built upon this idea that we're meant to be done, instead of, here we are in the unknowable mess of it all, and what's called for in this moment is how will I and we get shaped by the choice I make now? Because that will change me and it will change you, and we're never done. So I can apologize, for example, and say, I'm really sorry. When I yelled, as I have done, of course, in my life, when I yelled, I was so frightened and frustrated, and I'm really sorry. It's not the way I want to speak to you and treat you. And that's the point at which we get to return, but the return also changes us again for the next time round. So I sort of feel like, in a way, what we're doing here in Turning Towards Life, among other things, is we're talking again and again and again about this understanding of people, like when we were talking about love last week, that we are made actively by what we do, and that gives us such huge possibilities for responding to life that aren't there if we think we're a fixed something.
Yeah. That's very beautiful, Justin. That we could have the role of an unfolding being and give that same role to everyone else. Yeah. So I think we're at our time, and this has been a very beautiful conversation, which I think might be able to go on for 50 million hours if we let it. If we took each part of this and we spoke about each part, that would be a hell of a curriculum, wouldn't it? So I just want to say thank you to everybody here on Facebook, everybody in the podcast realm, and anybody even listening on our website or on YouTube, anybody. And just to say thank you for being here, and thank you, Justin, for us doing this, and that we will be back next week at 9 a.m. as usual, with a source very carefully chosen by Justin next week.
We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.